Hey everyone, welcome back to the Foodie Dietitian channel. My name is Carmen and I'm an accredited practicing dietitian from Sydney, Australia. And I hope everyone had a really nice Easter long weekend, a relaxing time, staying inside of course. But today I thought I might do what dietitians do best, which is talk about healthy eating and how we can best go about it. That's why I wanted to start with a simple topic today, just in the health star rating and talking about what it is and how it came about, how the stars are actually developed or how they are calculated, talk about some of the strengths and limitations and future directions for the system, and most importantly how we as consumers can use it in the most sensible and logical way to make the healthiest choices for ourselves. First of all, I'll start by talking about what the health star rating actually is. So it falls under what we would call front of pack labeling, and front of pack labeling has really strict rules and guidelines that is devised by the government to ensure that companies are telling the truth, can't make erroneous claims about any of their food products. And the health star rating was actually an initiative that was developed by the government, but also in collaboration with the food industry sectors, as well as public health officials, people like doctors, medical professionals, dietitians, researchers and scientists, and also the consumer. So the community had a huge input in the way that the health star rating was created. And so you can see that with these three big groups of people, there's going to be a lot of back and forth, a lot of disagreements, and conflicting priorities. And so the health star rating came about in the middle of 2014 as sort of the best solution, the one that everyone could agree on, and that is backed by the science as well. So it applies to all packaged foods and beverages in Australia and New Zealand that have more than one ingredient. So for example, something like flour or vinegar or herbs and spices wouldn't be eligible for the health star rating because they're only one ingredient. It's pretty self-explanatory and obvious, but the health star rating was designed to help consumers like you and me be able to compare between similar products and decide ones that are more healthier. Ultimately, it's aimed to help consumers make better decisions when it comes to buying in the retail environment, whether it be the supermarket or a convenience store or a petrol station. How are the stars actually given out? So I have taken this calculator that's directly from the health star rating website. So you can see here there are two columns. The first column here are our negative nutrient columns. So these are all the components that would negatively impact our health. So with that, the higher in proportion of these nutrients, the lower the score or the health star rating would be. And conversely, on the right, we have our positive nutrients that are actually good for us. They positively impact our health. So in saying that, the higher the proportion of these nutrients like fiber and fruit and vegetable content, the better, and it will boost the health star rating. And this rating ranges from 0.5 to 5, with 5 stars obviously being the healthiest, and the scale increases and decreases by 0.5 increments. That's just a little bit about how the health star rating works. I'll also put up here all the different iterations that companies can use, just from the most basic energy content to the most comprehensive, which is including everything, the 5-star rating, as well as some major nutrients such as sugar, fat, salt or sodium, and fiber, and perhaps other voluntary nutrients like calcium as well can be included. So now let's talk a little bit about why the health star rating was developed, a little bit of history behind it, because it is really quite interesting. So like I mentioned earlier, the health star rating system officially came out in the middle of 2014, and it replaced maybe some of you might remember this, but the Heart Foundation tick that was previously on our food packages. And this came about through many years of research, of focus group testing, of interviewing people, a lot of back and forth between industry and consumers and government officials to actually have this come out. And how does the health star rating compare with the rest of the world? In the UK, they have a traffic light system, and we did experiment with the traffic light system before, and there was a lot of talk about implementing this, but in the end, food industry put their foot down and said that they didn't like it, ultimately because it would affect perhaps the profits of these companies. So that's why we have this voluntary health star rating system now. So not everyone has to participate, but obviously the more companies that you can get on board, the better, and the better that it works. Now in France, they have another system called the Nutri-Score system, and this is quite similar to our rating system in the sense that there are 5 ratings, A to E, obviously with A being the healthiest and E being the least healthy, and these ratings are determined by a number of factors as well, including the nutrients that are in the foods, but other things like food processing as well. Now let's go through some of the pros and cons of the health star rating, because with a system like this, whilst there are many good things about it, it's not perfect, and there's a long way to go to get this to be the best it possibly can. So let's start with the good things. What is good about the health star rating? So first of all, it is ubiquitous, it is easy to recognize, and it's very intuitive. Obviously, when we look at a star rating, we think to ourselves, the more stars, the better, right? And that's how it was designed to be, to help consumers just make really quick on-the-spot judgments without having to turn the package around and look at the nutrition panel. It was designed to be used to compare products in the same category, so similar products like breakfast cereals and yogurts, breads, things like that. So it shouldn't be used across the board or across categories. That's not what it was designed to do. In saying that, it has a really high uptake by companies. A lot of companies have gone on board with this system, especially with our major supermarket chains like Coles and Woolworths, where all the products are labelled with the health star rating. Researchers also found that the vast majority of health star ratings are accurate, so there isn't a lot of cheating or over reporting of the stars by companies. So it is a pretty reliable tool that we can use. And finally, and the most promising thing that's come out of the health star rating is it's actually encouraged a lot of food companies to reformulate their products in order to boost their rating. And so if you can have an impact on both the consumer in making better choices, but also in the industry and the food supply, that's an excellent thing. All right, with the good, there's always a downside. So let's talk about limitations. So like I said, when we have a system that is created with a number of key players, there's always going to be differing perspectives, a lot of back and forth, different priorities, different interests. So the health star rating is probably the best that we could come up with given the circumstances and all those players that are involved. I think one of the key limitations and what's garnered the most criticism is how the stars are actually calculated. So I'll bring up the calculator here again. Whilst it does cover a wide range of nutrients, it's not comprehensive, and you're not truly getting the big picture of whether or not that food item is healthy or not. For example, here in the negative nutrient column, we have sugars here as a nutrient, but there isn't much attention on added sugars, which is probably more of a concern rather than the total sugars, because sometimes the sugar content could be from naturally occurring sources like fruit. If it's a fruit-based product, then it's naturally going to have a lot more sugar. So the system here can falsely penalize food products that are naturally high in sugar, but still could be a really healthy food option. Alternatively, if we look at the positive nutrient column, I think this is where it's most lacking. So we have our fiber and our fruit and veg content, as well as some voluntary nutrients like calcium that we can include. But again, it's not comprehensive, and there's so many other healthy nutrients in our foods that are so good for us. For example, it doesn't include any of our essential fatty acids, such as our omega-3s and our omega-6 fatty acids. Also, it doesn't take into account all of the wonderful antioxidants or even vitamins or minerals that can be found in the food. And I know that once you break it all down like that, it can get really overwhelming and too much for consumers to handle. But I think that there should still be more effort taken to look into some of these better nutrients for us. Another limitation I would say is that a lot of people still don't really know how to use it properly. So consumers might think that it's just a basic blanket tool to tell us what to buy. So we're going to go around and buy all the 4-star and 5-star products. But in fact, we need to use it as a comparative tool, something to put two very similar products side by side and decide which one to get, rather than really using it as a guide to make all of our buying decisions. And the last limitation, which I think is the most interesting, and I personally didn't know about this before doing my research, is that the Health Star rating allows companies to include other foods with their food or with that product before they calculate the stars. And I know I made it sound really confusing, but what I mean by that is, for example, when we have cereal, when they calculate the number of stars for the cereal, they also include the addition of skim milk before doing so. So I think that the Health Star rating is not truly representative of the actual product itself, but of the product as part of the complete meal. And in a sense, I think that the addition of skim milk will dilute some of the bad brownie points that product might have, and which is why we see a lot of cereals that are loaded in added sugars but still have a relatively high score, like 4 or 4.5. But if you actually look at the back, look at the nutrition panel, it's still very high in added sugar. Alright, so I've talked a lot about the Health Star rating and how it works, but now I wanted to give you an example and show you how we can actually use it in the best way possible. So like I said earlier, it's about taking a product that is very similar. Here I am showing a breakfast cereal, two very popular breakfast cereals. I have Nutri-Grain here and I have Weet-Bix. And as you can see, the Weet-Bix clearly has more stars than the Nutri-Grain, so it is, in theory, the healthier option. Another thing I have to say is that the rule of thumb is to go with a product that has 3.5 stars and above, so that would be generally a more healthier option. In saying that, I'm not saying that you need to completely avoid all the products that have less than the 3.5 stars, but those are the kind of products that indicate that maybe you shouldn't be having it all the time and it just should be a small part of your diet. And finally, it's still so important to turn the package around and read the label, because that's what tells the truth. The real truth lies in the nutrition panel. So it's still wise, I think, to read the label, compare the nutrients using the per 100 gram column. I can go more into reading labels in future videos, but it's very important to read the label and also look at the ingredients and look at whether or not there's any added sugars, other additives. If it has a lot of extra things like colorings and preservatives and other things like that that aren't actually a part of the actual food, then perhaps it's a better option to go with something else that is just mostly made up of whole food itself. Now let's talk about what currently stands with the Health Star rating and some of the future directions that the government is trying to take. As it stands, I don't think the Health Star rating is going anywhere despite all the ongoing criticisms about it. I think it is a sound system because it works. It does ultimately help consumers to make better choices. Now, with something like this, it's always going to be undergoing ongoing review and evaluation. I know that they're doing a review every 5 years and regular monitoring by the Heart Foundation. So there's always room for improvement, and I think one of the most promising signs is that there is debate in changing the way that the calculator works and potentially looking at added sugars and potentially also giving foods that are part of the 5 food groups more brownie points as opposed to foods that that are more discretionary, or what we call sometimes foods. So we are heading more in that direction, but like I said, there is still so much room for improvement, and at the end of the day, only a guide for us. It's not the be all and end all. Now, to wrap things up, I can give you a little bit more of my personal opinion. So I think it's a great thing. Anything that is encouraging people to make better choices, or even just making people more aware of what's in their food and what they're buying, is a great thing. And in addition, if it can change the way the industry works and change the food supply and encourage reformulation, it can't be a bad thing, right? But I want to pass this on to you. I would love to know more about your perspective on the Health Star rating. Have you used it before? Are you even aware of it? Do you use it regularly? And how do you use it? So sound off in the comments below. And if you have any other questions about it, you can also ask me down below as well. But yeah, other than that, I hope you found this video helpful. I hope that it breaks it down for you, and I hope you guys all enjoy the rest of your day and take care.